Hello, it's Alister McGrath again, and I'm continuing this theme of discovering and then exploring the visually rich image of an island of faith. And as I explained earlier in this series, I ended up abandoning my earlier belief system, which was that there is no God, and embraced what I discovered was a much more satisfying belief system based on the New Testament. Now again, atheism is a faith, believing there is no God, but you can't prove it. And that's how I ended up on this island of Christian faith. And having discovered it, I began to explore it. And I realized how little I knew about the Christianity I'd rejected as a teenager. One of the things I appreciated very much in my conversations with intelligent and reflective Christians at Oxford University in late 1971 was that I'd failed to grasp and understand even the most basic Christian beliefs. For example, the doctrine of the incarnation. And that was actually quite an important insight because I realized that part of my own personal growth in faith would have to be exploring these ideas. I might have some lingering rationalist prejudice. It might turn out to be completely irrational. I mean, the doctrine of Trinity seemed very suspicious to me. How could God be both one and three? But anyway, I felt I had to actually work out what Christians really believed and explore what that was all about. And so what I want to do is to tell you about some of the things I discovered as I explored the Christian faith. I'm going to begin by talking about the importance of seeing things in a new way. Again, seeing things in a new way. One of the things I noticed very quickly about Christianity was that it had a very interesting emphasis on seeing things properly. For example, the gospel healing narratives make the point that we all need to be enabled to see things as they really are, by, for example, healing our sight or by removing obstacles to our vision. Now, earlier I mentioned discovering the writings of C.S. Lewis back in February 1974. And one of the first writings of Lewis I read was entitled Is Theology Poetry? It's a very interesting essay, and here is its final sentence, which I found profoundly helpful. I believe in Christianity as I believe that the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. So I'd like you to try and imagine that scene. The sun is rising over a landscape, and as it rises, the shadows gradually are dispelled, and the landscape can be seen. It always was there, but you couldn't see it because it was enveloped in darkness. And the rising of the sun allowed you to see it with a depth and clarity that simply weren't possible before. Now, obviously, some shadows remain, partially obscuring the scene. We just don't see with the total precision and clarity that the philosophers of the Enlightenment took to be both desirable and achievable. And one of the things I had to discover was that we have to learn to live with, if you like, an imperfect beholding of a complex reality. If you like, we see darkly as a result of the limiting condition of being human. It's a very important New Testament theme. And not surprisingly, this theme is picked up by lots of Christian theologians. You might think, for example, of Augustine of Hippo in the 5th century, because Augustine talks about grace healing the eyes of the heart, allowing us to see and experience the world as it really is, rather than in some fragmented and distorted way. Now, earlier in this set of presentations, I gave you what I think is a very interesting quote from the French novelist Marcel Proust. And I want you to listen to it. It's very interesting. He writes, "The true voyage of discovery does not consist in searching for new landscapes, but in seeing them with new eyes." So here's my question. How does Christianity allow us to see things in a new way, through new eyes? And that's a very good question. As I began to wrestle with Christian beliefs, I realized there were three main questions that I needed to ask about each of them. Here's the first. What are the reasons for accepting this belief? Why should I believe this doctrine, for example, the doctrine of the incarnation? Second, What's the best way of explaining this doctrine to myself and to other people? And this question has become increasingly important to me over the years as I've come to appreciate the need to communicate the core ideas of Christianity through preaching and through teaching. But there's a third question, and the third question is this. If this belief is right, what difference does it make to the way I see things or the value I should attach to them? And there are two themes here: seeing things in a new way, and as a result, reappraising their value and their significance. Now, I found C.S. Lewis very helpful here, that Christianity was like a lens through which I could see reality in sharper focus, if you like. To use that image I mentioned a moment ago, it was like the sun irradiating a landscape, so I could see and appreciate its detail. Or it's like a window through which I could see the world. Now, I'd like to explore that third image, as I think it's very important. So let me tell you more about it. This theme is developed very well in the writings of the English poet George Herbert, especially his poem The Elixir. And here's the third verse of that poem. I want you to listen to it and try to work out what he's saying. A man that looks on glass, on it may stay his eye, or if he pleaseth through it pass, and then the heaven espy. So what's that all about? What does Herbert mean by those lines? What Herbert is doing, I think, is to contrast two different ways of interacting with a piece of glass, for example, a window. If you like, a looking on and a passing through. I could look at the window, seeing it as an object of interest in itself. I might notice, for example, that there was some dirt on the window or some scratches in the glass. But Herbert wants us to realize there is a second way of interacting with that same window. Here, we look through the window rather than look at the window. And the second way of interacting with the window really sees it as a means of gaining access to what lies beyond it. You look through it rather than look at it. I wonder if you can see the point he's trying to make. Let's try and work this through. I want you to imagine you are standing inside a house or outside a house, and there's a window. And you look through the window and you can see something. Perhaps it's a beautiful garden, perhaps it's an ocean, perhaps it's a beautiful landscape. But the point is, if the window it wasn't there, you wouldn't be able to see it. You wouldn't have known that the beach, the ocean, the landscape, the garden was there. Now, Herbert's point, I think, is this. Sometimes people get so interested in Christian theology that they just focus on its ideas and its beliefs. Now, I find that interesting, but the really important thing surely is to grasp, appreciate, and enjoy the vision of reality that the big picture offered by Christianity makes possible. In other words, you allow theology to open windows to seeing reality. So if Lewis and Herbert are right, then an atheist and a Christian could look at the same scene, and yet they would see something different. Now, I can confirm this from my own experience. I mentioned earlier that I was an atheist when I was a teenager. I used to love looking at the star-studded night sky. But I saw the starlit heavens as being elegant symbols of cosmic meaninglessness and human insignificance. I found myself struggling to come to terms with the apparent insignificance of human beings in terms of the enormous time scale of the universe. So I'm looking at the stars, and those are the thoughts that are going through my mind. And these thoughts really were triggered by a group of 3 stars at the center of the constellation of Orion, which was a very prominent feature of the Irish winter night sky. And the textbooks I'd read told me those 3 stars, sometimes known as the Belt of Orion, were so far away from us that the light from the furthest of them took more than 1,000 years to reach Earth. So actually, when you think about it, I was seeing that star not as it was then, but as it had been 1,000 years earlier. So here's my point. The light now leaving that star would take 1,000 years to get to Earth, by which time I was dead. So I saw the night sky as a symbol of my insignificance and transience. But that's not the way I think now. Because Christianity gives me a lens which allows me to see the world and those three stars in a very different way. One of the most powerful pieces of writing in the Old Testament, I think, is Psalm 8, which reflects on the place of humanity in the natural world. And the psalmist begins by considering the immensity of the night sky before turning to consider the place and significance of human beings in this vast universe. Here's what it says. When I look at your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon and the stars that you have established, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, mortals that you care for them? Yet you have made them a little lower than God and crowned them with glory and honor. Now I'm sure you can see the point. The stars that once were signs of hopelessness for me have now become signs of God's care and presence. I see the same stars as before, the same stars as everyone else, but the way in which I see them, the meaning I see in them, has changed. The Christian lens of faith allows me to look at them and see them in a different way. So the Christian lens of faith confirms my sense of awe in the presence of a vast universe, but it adds a layer of interpretation that allows me to see myself in a new way. Yes, I might be very small in comparison with the vastness of the universe, but I matter to God and I'm known to God, and that makes everything seem very different. I hope that example from my own personal history will help you see that part of my own journey of discovery was coming to appreciate how the world seems different when seen through a Christian lens. It's not just about Christian beliefs, it's about the way of looking at things that it makes possible. And one of the skills I've had to learn is to use this new Christian lens and discover the difference it makes to the way I understand and inhabit this world. But other inhabitants of this island can help us do this as well. So let's explore that point further as well. Now, as I look back over my 50-year exploration of the Christian faith, I've come to realize how so much of my own thinking comes about from my interactions with others who are already there on that island of faith, whether they're living or dead. Now, I've already referenced C.S. Lewis, who, of course, was a well-known inhabitant of the island of faith, and he helped me to learn its language, its customs, and also to settle into this new way of life and thought. But there are many others who have helped me to see things more clearly, just as you will find others who will help you understand this new world and get used to its customs and its lifestyles. We can all learn from those who already inhabit this island of faith. They know this way of seeing the world, they know its language, and they can help us settle down and grow into it. We can gain insights and wisdom from those who've journeyed in faith before us, as well, of course, as those who are now journeying alongside us. So who are these people? Well, my own favorites include Augustine of Hippo, C.S. Lewis, Dorothy L. Sayers, and Marilyn Robinson. But there are countless others we can consult and from whom we can learn. Now, I came to faith with some unanswered questions, and I hoped these would be resolved as I explored this new island of faith. And we all come to faith with unanswered questions. Or if we've had faith for a long time, there are still questions we have to sort out. One of my problems was this. I loved the natural sciences, but when I was a teenager, to love science was to hate God. Science was at war with religion. So was there a way of seeing the relationship between science and faith that would allow me to see them as compatible, even as enriching? Now, our Christian friends who were science students at Oxford didn't actually see any problem in holding their faith and their science together. They just said all truth is God's truth. There isn't really a problem here. And I'm sure they were right, but I needed more. It wasn't enough for me to be told that science and faith were not incompatible. I wanted to be able to see how they could be held together in an imaginatively and rationally compelling way. And then I heard a sermon preached by Charles Coulson, who was then Oxford University's Professor of Theoretical Chemistry and a prominent local Methodist lay preacher. And you know, it changed the way I saw the relation of science and faith, and I realized I could hold them together with integrity. I'm going to tell you all about this in the next presentation. So thank you so much for listening to me, and I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.